Sounds good. Okay. Good afternoon. We're gonna go over some move in and move out room and utility processing, and kind of understand the relationship between each of the three programs within Al Software Solutions. I know we've covered it probably multiple times, but it sometimes takes practicing um, uh, a number of times to get used to the room and utility processing. So we're going to go ahead and start. And Abby, I've got this recorded too, just in case we need to do a look back to it. So here, we all seen this page here. This is where you have your three modules: lead tracking, spawn, resident account management, also known as RAM. So to understand the relationship between all three here, it all starts from lead tracking. And you've got your leads coming in, you've got your activities that you're going to record. This is where you're going to turn your leads into a deposit in lead tracking. And then it turns into where you manage that deposit and move them in by assigning them a room. Just so you guys understand, as EDs and CRCs and even office managers, we're going to start from the very beginning. When you have the CRCs who typically are tracking the leads, what the CRCs or the EDs are going to do, once they have a lead that they're working on, they're going to click this little move in deposit and notification. Okay, so we're in this test community here, so we're going to go ahead and start from the very beginning so you understand how it all starts. So we're going to pick a random I'm going to pick a random person here. Let's pick Bob Human. Okay. So Bob Human, we're going to use a projection date. For our purposes, for example, we're going to use 6/15 here, and I'm going to show you why we picked 6/15. So we're going to pick a room, 106, and payer type, private, apartment type, assisted living, and go ahead and enter in all the fields here. We're going to click 500. We're going to type in ready to move in this week. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click on enter deposit, and the notifications are going to go out to the EDs, the CRCs, to Abby, to Peggy. Congratulations, you've entered a new move-in deposit. And so, okay, so for this, to check your move-in depositors, you're going to go ahead back into lead tracking. You're going to click on this move-in deposits. And so we've entered this new potential resident, Bob Human here. And so this is where it all starts, by clicking on that move-in deposit. Okay. So how do we manage this person now? So out in the home field here, we're going to head into resident account management. Okay. This is where we're going to go select your field community. And the very first thing that you want to do is you want to check if that resident is actually in your move-in deposit list here. So that's going to be under your reports, resident list, and then current move-in deposits and notices. Okay. So in this section right here, you'll see Bob Human here, that this person is ready to projected to move in on 6/15. Okay. So it's now 6/13, and this potential resident is ready to move in today. Okay. It's not 6/15, but 6/13, but it's a 2-day earlier than their projected date, but we can still move them in. So what you'll need to do is make sure that you've got the room not assigned to anybody first. So you want to head into reports, the rooming reports, and to resident room list is what I like to use. You can also use the resident roster, but the resident room list is easier to read. So from here, you'll see your community resident assignment rooms here, and you can also sort by your room numbers here if it makes it easier. So we're gonna move Mr. Human into room 103 because it's vacant here. Okay, and please stop me or ask me questions if in the middle of this, or if you want me to slow down, I can happy to do that too. So room 103. Yes, so under reports, resident list, and then move-in deposits and notices where you're going to find all your depositors. Okay, and this is also where you would go to adjust any of the dates in red that you might see in on your DSR where it's showing in red, and this is where you update the dates. And so so you can go ahead and choose a future date, and then make sure you click on this update button right here. Okay. But the resident list is actually located under rooming reports and resident room list. Okay. And so here we're going to sort by apartment number by clicking on this underline apartment number here. Okay. And so we wanted to make sure that the person that we're going to be assigning the room is vacant, room 103. I only say that because sometimes we forget to move somebody out during a turnover, and you have to process a move out before you can process a move in. If you assign them the same room, the census will not change. Okay? You can manually enter them in, but you're going to wonder why your census hasn't moved. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and head into actions in rooming utility. We do not want to use the add new resident addition option here. What this it's okay. It's okay, Gina. We do not want to use this add new resident option. This function is primarily for setting up a brand new community, and it's to manually enter and bypass any sort of triggers that might not allow someone to move somebody in. So we always want to use the rooming utility is the best thing to do. When you want to move in or move out or transfer, respite stay, you always want to use a rooming utility. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move in Mr. Human. Okay, so here's Bob. And just so you guys understand, move in is a single process, so you would choose one. Move out would be a one process, step 2. It could be a 2 process step if you were doing a transfer from room 100 to maybe 1001, maybe into an assisted, into a memory care. That would be a transfer out and a transfer in. Sometimes it can get a little bit more complicated where you have a new resident moving into a room, and they move into a room and don't like the one side of the room because there's too much sun on one side of the building, and they want to transfer into a different room on the other side of the building. So that would require a 3-step process of moving in, transfer out, and then transferring into a different unit. So it'd be a unique 3-step process. If that ever happens, I'm happy to help you out with that process. Because why that's important is because you want to show that move-in on your DSR as a move-in for that month, and you also want to show the transfer on the DSR for that same month too, in the same accounting period. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So for today's, we're just going to go use a single process, and we're going to go ahead and click on process number 1. We're going to pick the room. The care level, I always use a P1 unless you know exactly what the care level is. It really only matters You can go ahead and change it at a later date too, but there's a report to find your average level of care. So it's important, but in this very initial part, it's not as important. So clicking on P1 is what I would use 90% of the time, unless you absolutely know what level they are. Rooming activity is going to be a move-in, and the end date is going to be today's date. We're going to use today's date instead of the 6/15 date here, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Okay. The out date we're going to leave blank because it's a move-in. Okay. The number of days pops up. The prorated amount pops up by clicking on a different field. You press continue, submit rooming transaction, and then once that hits, you're going to go back and check the rooming reports and head into the resident room list. And we're going to go and check room 103 and to check to see if the resident had, if you've processed the move-in correctly here. See how the dates are the move-in date and the activity date, which is also the first occupancy date, is different by 2 days. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to process. I guess I can actually head over to lead tracking test. We're going to take a look at what the daily sales report is going to look like in the evening at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And you're going to wonder why at 6 o'clock when you get your DSR, why Mr. Human isn't showing up on your move-in list here. And your census hasn't moved at all as well. Okay. And so the reason why that happened is because your census, I'm sorry, not your census, but your first occupancy date and your move-in date does not match, and the program requires those two dates to match. So we're going to go back and we're going to check on room 103, and so we're going to adjust the first occupancy date to the move-in date. Okay. To do that, we're going to head into resident and resident information. We're going to find Mr. Human. And see how this section right here where it says first occupancy date of 6/15, we're going to change that to 6/13. Okay. So you're probably wondering, what is the difference between the first occupancy date and the move-in date, and why is it so important, and why does it affect my DSR? The first occupancy date is a date that's pulled from lead tracking into RAM, where you initially entered in that move-in deposit date, that projected move-in date. Does that make sense to everybody? So that date, it pulls from lead tracking into RAM, so it was set at 6/15. Okay, and so you're going to have to set that projected move-in date to match the projected move-in date to the actual move-in date. So we're going to go ahead and save. We're going to go back and check the rooming reports and resident room list here. We're going to go back and check room 103, 13. Okay. So I'm going to pull the DSR, this custom DSR for seasons, and we're going to go back to lead tracking while that does that. Go back to the lead, and we're going to take a look at the daily sales report. Okay, so we've got Mr. Human here who's moved in today at 6/13, and so you've got the census still sitting at 37, and you've got the prior version before the rooming utility still sitting at 37. So why hasn't my census changed, Steve? So I'm going to show you. Okay. Oh, actually, this is a really bad example, guys. I'm sorry. I did a lot of cleaning up on the test account, and I've moved out a lot of bad residents, if you will, as I was cleaning up, and this census does not change until the actual the following day. And I really wanted to show you the difference between a standard DSR report versus a custom seasons report. And the big difference is that we have different sections in our DSR report, but the big thing is that our census actually changes as the rooming utilities has been processed. So anytime you have a move-in or a move-out, the census actually moves as well. But the standard DSR, it doesn't change until the following day. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so any questions on the actual move-ins and the first occupancy date versus a move-in date? Are there any questions about the move-ins? None? Okay. So move-out is just as easy, and so we're going to go into resident list. I'm sorry, rooming and the room list here. Okay. So the move-out is just as simple. We're going to move out Mr. Cool here. Okay. Ace Cool in room 102. Okay. So you're going to go back to actions and rooming utility. Okay. And so we're going to go find Mr. Cool. And it's a one-step process. We're going to click on process number 1. We're going to click this little radio button here, copy data. And you're going to choose move out. And in the end date, you want to choose the first occupancy date, which is 3/5. Okay. And we're going to choose the out date as today. And the numbers are already kind of auto-populate, and then we're going to choose the reason why. We're going to pick I don't know, no more money. Go ahead and click on continue for room 102. Click submit. Check your room list. Sort by room. Room number 102 is not there no longer. And so go to if you want to go check what the DSR is going to look like. Here's what the move out notification looks like when it comes through. We're going to go back into lead tracking, and we're going to check the daily sales report, and then you'll find let's see here, move outs, where are you? Mr. Cool here. So Ace Cool that we moved out on 6/13, so they'll show up on the actual move out dates. Okay, very simple. Does anyone have any questions about the move outs? Abby, do you want me to go over transfers?
Yeah, the transfer would be helpful if people don't want to do that.
Okay. Does everyone understand how transfer? Does anyone want to see how a transfer works? Okay, so let me help with the transfer here. So let's go ahead. Let's see here. Let's pick a resident. Okay, so we're going to head back into your home page and into RAM. And again, the very first thing that you want to do is getting used to going into your room list here, resident room list. And you always want to check the resident to make sure that they're in that room. And so we're going to move Mr. Bob Dunn from 133, 133, and then we're going to move him into 134. Okay. All right. So we're going to go into actions, and we're going to head into rooming utility. We're going to find Mr. Dunn, and it's a two-step process. And process number one, I'm going to copy the information, is going to be the transfer out. And here we're going to enter in the first occupancy date and the out date. So if we wanted to process the transfer as, let's just say the transfer took place on 6/10. You want to transfer that person out on 9/9. I'm sorry, 6/9. Okay, the day before the actual transfer date. Okay. So continue. Process number two. Copy. And this is going to be really important to make sure that you choose the room that they're going into. Okay. 134. And transfer in. And now you want to choose the date, 6/10. Go ahead and continue. And see how these numbers here adds up to 30. The transfer out date, prorated dates amount of the beginning of the month and the tail end of the month. This number has to match the total number of days in the month. Okay, so you want to click on Submit. Go back to your rooming reports, room list. Click on Apartment, and just make sure that that person is in room 134 now. Okay. And so here's one thing about the standard DSR that does not show. Actually, I'm going to process this. If you go ahead and check the DSR report, the standard DSR report off of lead tracking, this report does not show the transfers, and so you'll have to wait to see if it actually processed, if you wanted to see the report at 6 o'clock. Okay, so I'm going to show you the custom DSR report. And so now you've got Mr. Bob Dunn here, who's transferred out on 6/9 and transferred in on 6/10. Okay, so, and it doesn't affect your census because all it is a transfer. Okay, so these two dates should be sequential. So 6/9, 6/10. It can't be on for accounting purposes, counting the number of days. You can't have the transfer in and then transfer out on the same day. I know it makes sense to us, but for accounting purpose, you can only occupy one day. Okay, pretty simple. Does anyone have any questions about transfers? Yes, absolutely. Once you process, I think what you're talking about is this button here, so let me just get there. Is this the button that you're referring about? Oh, okay, that's a very good question. Okay, very good question. So, sometimes when you change the name of, that's actually a very good question. And so in SPA, we're getting a little off track, but we'll do this really quick. And let's see, personal information. Okay, so you've got Bay Jamie here, and we misspelled that name. It should be Jamy. Okay, and so we're going to go back to RAM, and we're going to go back to test, resident information, Bay Jamie, and so that's how you properly spell Jamie instead of with an IE. So we're going to go ahead and save changes. Okay. So next time when you refresh it, so now it's Bay Jamie with a JMY. So if you go back to SPA and we look at Jamie here, Jamie is still spelled with an IE. So what happens, Steve? What do you need to do to sync the two modules together? Okay. So what you need to do is you need to head into your SPA utilities and click this little button that says sync resident data from AR. Okay. You would think that it's done automatically as you're changing in the whole, then all three modules would be connected somehow without having to manually click a button. Unfortunately, I didn't write the program, so you have to at times click this little sync resident data. And so when we go back to resident view file, now you see Bay Jamie, the name being adjusted here. Okay. So anytime your nurses or your RCCs or your PMs say, hey, I know I made some changes to the on the RAM side name, usually 99% of the time it's a correction of name spelling. You do that through RAM, and then you head over to SPA and then utilities, and then click on the sync resident data in order for that that change to occur on SPA, which affects your service plans. So good question. No, no, you don't. Yeah. Any other questions about the rooming utility? Does everyone know how to process a move-out notice? Not that we like using it. Would you like for me to show everyone how to process a move-out notice? Okay. All right, so we're going to head back into RAM, and we're going to head into your community. We got used to heading into reports and rooming reports and into resident room lists or under actions and the rooming utility function. But under utilities, you're going to see an option to enter a move-out notice here. Okay. And so you're just going to go ahead and click Mr. Cool here, and you're going to fill in all the fields here. It's either a 1-day or a 30-day notice, and pick out the date. So we're going to go ahead and pick July 11th. When going to foster home, and in this move-out notice here is I would write as much detail as possible. ED meeting, maybe family was set to move, maybe higher level of care needed, confirmed with ED. Okay, so go ahead and enter that move out notice, and what will happen is that you'll get this email. That'll also show up on your DSR report as a under this. Oh, well, you'll also get this little notice here that says move out notice process, and you'll also see that notice under the active move out notice section of the DSR. Okay. And you see how all these dates here are all in red here, and this is just screaming for needing updates. So Christy Blizzard, who needs attention here, we're going to go ahead and update this date here, the projected move out date. And so where you're going to go is under resident list under reports and current move out notices. Okay. And so you're going to see Christy here. This is where you're going to see all the move out notices, and this is where you want to update everyone's move out notice dates, where all the dates in red. So you're going to go ahead and update that little button right there, and that automatically updates the dates there. Okay. So your DSR at 6 o'clock when it generates automatically, it'll not show up in red. Okay. So out of all the functions through the RAM, I'd really like for everyone to get familiarized at using the rooming utility, not the add new resident, but the rooming utility. The resident information, this is where you're going to go and adjust the first occupancy date. The other areas are going to be the rooming resident room list under reports. The resident list option, looking at the move-in deposit notices and move-out notices. Move in and move out. And then your enter move-out notice function here. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Abby, I think we've covered the basics of the rooming utility. Do you want me to cover anything else?
No, can you hear me, Stephen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's just important that we all know that Stephen and I are all here to help you at a time. The report will allow us to come to pretty much our entire executive team here in the office and our owners. And so if they're not reflected in the staff on us, we're not completing our staff daily. I mean, we're a customer that produces a daily report for a reason. There's ownership and investment groups that want to see that data. Not always are you as wise and some of folks as you are. And so picking up the phone for 2 minutes to get students a call and say, hey, I'm talking to my first streaming transfer. That's why we're here. We're here to prepare you guys. Instead of just rushing over it and potentially you have to take her, if you do try it on your own, you can say, let's get it corrected immediately so when reports will allow it to say they're accurate. We need to make sure our notes are accurate too, accurately reflective of any changes for the day. Do you guys have any questions for Steve or I?
Abby, there is one. I'm sorry. Oh, Abby and the guys, there is one report that I use quite frequently that I'd like to share with you. It's under reports and under rooming reports and day-to-day census report. So this report is nice because it actually tracks your census from day to day, and it'll track all the move-ins and move-outs. So let's actually, I'm going to pick on Westwind here because we worked on Westwind today. And so we're going to go to Westwind here. And we're going to go under rooming reports and day-to-day census. And so when Maureen looks at this here, what we did today was we entered in Philip Meredith as a respite. So it was a move-in on 6/8, and it's going to be a move-out on 6/17. So that's why you already have Philip here and a Philip here as a move-in and move-out. And so their DSR will look like this here. this here where it has Philip as a move-in date, and Philip has a projected move-out date as 6/17. And you can always go back and change this here um, if they decide to uh, stay a couple days longer, or even better, maybe they decide to stay as a permanent resident. So whatever rooming utility you process, the most current rooming process is going to supersede the last one. And so if they decide to stay, it'd be an easy one-step move-in process for Philip. Pretty simple. Okay, so you can take a look at this rooming reports and day-to-day census to track all the activities, the move-ins and move-outs. Basically, your primary census number here, that should match your total census number here. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, it's a great way because you can track all your move-ins and move-outs. You can see it from left to right here, just to see how your census number changes as each time you process a moving utility. Okay, so I hope that report helps out everyone too.
Yes, and then Maureen, did you have a comment or a question? Just takes a couple of times. If you're not doing it every day, and then you to it, brand new building, you've only actually been in, 15 or 16 residents total.
Yes, it takes a lot of practice. I've only gotten to use it so well. I've been using it so often with 5-6 buildings here, so 5 times that much more than you would normally do it. So
Any
yeah.
other questions? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Stephen. You're always a phenomenal teacher and go through it very easy to understand. And I appreciate that about the training in the
Sure.
because we can get bogged down in all the little details.
Thanks. Alrighty. All right. Take care, guys.